This is a loosely coupled show with James Hickey and Derek Martin. If you're new to this channel, we chat about software architecture and design. Make sure to subscribe to get all our latest episodes.
And this has been on Twitter too, as far as like the .NET Foundation. I've seen a lot of flack against the whole idea, right? Like, what's the point of the .NET Foundation? And some people have been tweeting about it's actually for Microsoft to benefit from. It's not actually to support open source, things like that. It's actually to benefit companies, to make open source easier for companies to use, whatever, however that works out. Yeah, I mean, there have been examples recently of, what is it, AppGet, is that the name of that?
Yeah.
That thing? Yeah, that's really sad, but I guess, yeah, it's happened before, and it's, as a community, and when I say community, I mean like the Microsoft.NET team umbrella. If they don't address those kinds of things, I think, yeah, people are just gonna, not that everyone is going to jump off the boat, but it's definitely going to put a larger barrier for anyone to want to come in to .NET. Because I mean, open source is, I mean, when people consider what language or frameworks they want to learn, I think open source is a huge part of that. Whether that's wanting to contribute to open source or use open source things, yeah, it's definitely a big issue.
Yeah, I think too, because I don't know any other framework language platform that is really just solely guided by one primary company.
Yeah.
And it has some benefits and it has some drawbacks to it. The biggest drawback that everybody kind of states is that there's not much motivation to create anything that's going to become really popular.
Yeah.
Like, there's always this lingering fear then that Microsoft's going to come out with, and it doesn't have to be a better product or framework or whatever that you've created. Its simple existence, for the most part,
yeah,
will automatically end up becoming the default that people use, and then just completely eliminate what you've done. Now, there were examples of projects that kind of have stood the test of time, but like, I mean, like Newtonsoft, JSON, like, sure, yeah, but those are the anomalies.
Yeah, and plus they're very, I don't want to say they're very targeted, but I feel like they're niche too. Like there's a like JSON or AutoMapper or Mediator. Like those are very, like, there's one tiny problem that you're trying to solve, as opposed to, let's say, AppGet, which is kind of like a product, right? Essentially.
And that's the thing, is that I don't find it like there's a lot of suggestions on how to solve this, but I don't know. I don't, it just, the overall needs to be felt like it's a community driven thing, when
Yeah.
I think just the reality of it is not. It's a Microsoft driven thing.
Yeah.
It can be open source. People can contribute. It's all done in the open, sure, but it's still, sure, and that's just the way it is. It's just ultimately still led in, I don't want to say dictated, but it kind of is, like, by just them running it. And
yeah,
there's a lot of examples of it. The most recent probably being Damien Hickey had a project called Proxy Kit that he started a couple years ago, maybe. It was a reverse proxy. And then Microsoft announced YARP. And then, like, the day it was announced, he just said, I'm done with this. Like, legitimately, I'm done with this. Like, he kind of knows the writing on the wall. Like, it's, what's the point? Like, there's no point. He was creating it likely because he had the need. Nothing existed, right? And then all of a sudden, something comes out that Microsoft's producing, and that just by default, that is going to become the thing people use, no matter what.
Yeah, and it's like, how much time will it take Microsoft to get their new product up to snuff at the same in terms of like features and things like that.
Yeah, I don't
Up
even
to
know like if it ever
what he's
needs
done.
to be like the comparable. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't really. I don't know who said it. I'm paraphrasing here. I will hopefully link in the comments when I find the actual tweet or somebody else said it. I don't know who. It's just that Microsoft's competent. Like they're good at making products. They're good at making libraries. They're good at making
Yeah.
frameworks. So like if they were completely a tire fire, it wouldn't take over everything when they
Yeah.
come out with something. It's just that they do. They produce good things, and then those good things, they don't have to be better than what's already out there. It just has to be good enough, and that's generally what it is, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like .NET Core is kick ass. Like the fact that they've come out with this and put that much into performance and everything with it. Yeah, they produce good things. So it's like you're going to get mad at them. Anything that previously existed. I mean, the app-get thing's a whole different conversation, right? Because there was communication. I don't even want to get in that, but that one's a separate. But then people would say, well, that separate thing is just indicative of everything else that happens. I don't know. Like this is a never-ending conversation of this, of like that there's ill intent on their part, which I don't think there is.
Yeah.
Are they doing things maybe in a way that everybody wants that would really help the community? I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of great ideas about it, but I don't know how you get the ball moving in that direction. I think people hope the foundation would do that, and that's the point. I mean, before this, I wanted to post like, I don't know, somebody else posted it before, like, you know what I mean? With a little meme of like it's from Office Space. It's like, what do you say you do? Like, I don't know, like what the .NET Foundation does. Like people join the .NET Foundation as their projects. They apparently get some benefits. I never hear from these people of like what the benefits are. Like, I don't know what they actually do.
They
like,
probably have to sign an NDA and cannot talk about anything. Probably.
I don't know what I've like. There's apparently programs that the .NET Foundation does. I feel like I'm pretty tapped into the .NET world. I have no idea what those things are. They're clearly not very good at communicating what those are. Is an option, or I'm oblivious to these things and it's my fault. Sure. I don't know.
My understanding, I don't know, from like a year ago, was basically they ensured packages won't go away unmaintained. So they basically you give ownership of your project to Microsoft, but you're allowed to be
to the foundation.
Sorry, to the foundation, yes, which is a separate entity legally. That was my understanding like a year ago. It was just basically to make sure nobody, so you don't get the issue with like NPM or whatever. We get well, it can happen anywhere, right? But
yeah,
you get a package, maintainer gets burnt out and they don't want to maintain this anymore. What do you do?
Yeah.
So in this case, they've selected or nominated different projects that if they do go unmaintained, the .NET Foundation has ownership of it. But from what I've been hearing recently, that is not actually their goal. It's different. So that's just it. I don't know either. I've heard a lot, and maybe it's not that clear to me what the point is of the .NET Foundation. To me, if I were in that position, what would I do? Probably just like stir up the community of like, you know what I mean? Like help existing open source projects, give them some money. I actually read the financial report of the .NET Foundation, like the budget, which I think was like the finances for last year, which is nice that they're open about that. But when you look at the amount of money they spent on legal, which is like 30% or something, some high number, which I totally get because they need to do legal things for like licensing and whatever. I think the other, there are lots of different categories. I forget how much they had total. The total they had was like over $200,000, like 200 odd $1,000. There was one line where it was like the amount of money they like gave to open source projects. It was like 500 something dollars. And to me, like, I feel like that's one of the probably the big ways you could contribute. You know what I mean? Like, let's say, I don't know, let's say someone hasn't, like, I have an open source project. Let's say it's me. I have a full-time job. I have lots of stuff going on. I have a family. I have a life, and everybody expects me to, or people expect me to like maintain this thing. So yeah, it's like, what if they gave me X amount of dollars every month or year or whatever? Like, that would be nice. It definitely would encourage me a little bit more. What if they offered to have like Microsoft staff, like developers on their staff, contribute? Okay, like that would be helpful, at least
But
to.
that's the problem there, is that you're again conflating Microsoft and the foundation.
Well, that, yeah, and I think that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of the foundation if they're not going to do those kinds of things? So if they're not able to do those things, maybe they need to reconsider what they're doing. But again, maybe their purpose, which I've heard, is actually to just, it's actually to be on the side of the companies to help them to use open source projects.
Yeah, I think it's just, what's the goal? Like, if the goal, yeah, maybe like if I think the goals are this and they're not doing that, then clearly I'm not gonna have a positive opinion. I don't even know what the goals are. So like, to say, hey, you're doing an awesome job, everybody. Like, I don't even know what they're supposed to do.
That's probably the biggest thing, is like, people have been talking about this for like a year or two, and like now it's nomination time, so people are talking about it more, but it's like, there's so many people who don't, us included, don't actually understand what the point of the foundation is. Like, it's all fine and dandy that they're doing stuff.
The one thing I think I would like to see happen, like to be a goal maybe of it, is to have a push so that there are more givers and less takers. Meaning that I see, again, in my Twitter bubble, so many maintainers kind of burnt out or frustrated, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like every time I read these threads, it's always because there's so many takers and no giver. Like, there's people consuming it, but not producing anything.
Yeah.
On the other side. So I feel like there's got to be this push to companies that can afford to do so, to say, hey, listen, you're consuming these things either monetarily or, like you said, via your own development teams, being able to contribute back, right? Like, send PRs, add docs to the libraries that you're using. Like, be more involved instead of just being a taker where all you do is consume open source and you do nothing in return. That there needs to be more of a give and take here, like relationship, than it's just take.
And I wonder if that's different in other ecosystems.
I think so, a little bit, because you think about how many other platforms, maybe not the smaller frameworks or libraries, but just the platforms as a whole, are, again, not just not just one major company contributing to it.
Yeah.
Usually there's more than just one. In .NET world, it's just Microsoft. So you only end up with, like, there's no, let's imagine that Amazon, AWS comes out with a competitor to something like, they create their own framework on top of, say, ASP.NET Core or something, like you keep all your startup middle, but they, instead of like MVC or whatever, they create something specifically out their own, right? Like, you got things like Carter, for example.
Yeah.
But like, let's say that they came out with their own something of that. Like, there's nothing else that exists to that. And nobody's, like, the adoption is gonna be terrible because it's, Microsoft has, Razor Pages, MVC, you know what I mean? But if they had their own kind of routing for whatever it is, whether it's serverless, something that sits on top of AWS specifically, but that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So why does that stuff not exist by bigger companies? I don't
Oh,
know. Right?
I
So
suspect it's because I don't know if there'd be legal issues, but there would be probably like because it's all owned by Microsoft, right? So it's probably like now we're locking into Microsoft and they're going to look at us as being a competitor if people start adopting our way of doing things on their framework.
well, I'll give you the
I don't,
example of why was I so AWS like a month or two ago came out with their .NET like core migration tool.
yeah,
You can download that tool. You basically select your solution, analyzes the code, your projects, package references, all that good stuff, and then kind of gives you a report of like, here's what will work, here's what's migratable, not, etc.
yeah,
I was amazed. Why was I amazed that they did that? I think I
because
was
I
because
know
nobody
why.
else does this.
Yeah,
Like,
because the analyzer tool that Microsoft has given us sucks. I've tried
yes,
it and it sucks.
it's not ideal, but you know what I mean. I'm more amazed that there was somebody like AWS that came out that did something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because like
Yeah.
nobody does that. It's either it comes from Microsoft or it's a small community project. Like, and people aren't really like, why was there no community project that does the exact same thing? Exactly, like because I've thought about it. I thought, well, and I've gone through this big migration. I know what was lacking in it.
Yeah.
But again, you're always kind of like, well, Microsoft going to come out with something like this? Am I going to put my effort into this and it's all
Yeah.
for naught? Like,
Yeah. I can see for AWS because they want people to come on.
yeah, for
And
sure.
if they see that the tools Microsoft has given .NET developers isn't that great, why not? I had another thought. Okay, yeah. So I think part of it too is because Microsoft wants people to use Azure because that's where they make their money is Azure. So I can see if Amazon creates some framework or some easy way to use .NET on AWS, at least easier than it is now. I mean, it is pretty easy
It's
anyways,
easy.
but yeah, definitely if they add this thing like you're talking about that helps promote or makes it easier to use AWS, I can see Microsoft saying, well, it's taking away from the Azure market share. What do we do about that? Like, I don't know. I don't know what they do about that. But from Amazon's point of view, I wonder if they would just say like, yeah, we're not going to go there.
Yeah, I just
But
think it's
I
like
don't know.
there's one back, you know what I mean, kind of in the Owen days, at least we had Nancy. Um, we had other frameworks that people were building,
Yeah,
so you weren't using Web API, right? There was some alternative, but then when Core came
yeah,
along, guess what? Everything went away, and now it's
yeah,
just ASP.NET Core. Yeah, you got things like Carter that are kind of the Nancy way to deal with routing and stuff like that. And it's awesome that that's being made, but like at least Nancy got some alternative gain of popularity to it,
yeah,
right? Like, and it's kind of like with the Core, it just kind of became a reset again of here's all the stuff that you're using, and it's all for Microsoft again. And
yeah.
that
Well,
just doesn't feel very healthy.
yeah, it's like, yeah. For example, like the routing in .NET Core or yeah, .NET Core 3, they added the simplified routing system, I guess,
Yeah,
which is kind of similar to the way Carter and Nancy are doing
yeah,
it. So it's like you can build that into the framework, and I know that under the covers that actually helps them to do other things. But yeah, it's like what if yeah, I guess it's tough. I mean, they want it to do everything and do it well. I
yeah.
understand that, but at the cost of like your community.
It
Yeah,
is, like, and I don't know if there's any like it's not. I don't think there's any intent for it. It's just making the best framework product that they can possibly do, and then you could say that there's the whole not invented here syndrome a little bit, but I think there's more to that sometimes. And I know there's a lot of history and I don't know. I don't know what would actually change it. I do think the foundation, if that was their goal to make, if that was a goal to make it more community centered and Microsoft is a part of the community versus Microsoft and then the community around it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I explained that very well, but it's the majority of it's got to be the community, and Microsoft's a part of the community.
Yeah.
Rather than right now, it's the other way around. There's Microsoft and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. It'd be nice if they could give to these projects. And they would say, yeah, we are, because if you join the .NET Foundation, we'll give you all these benefits. But what I'm saying is, don't even, like, without having to join the foundation, pick some projects that they're just going to help. You know what I mean?
Well, if you haven't, I don't know if voting is over for the .NET Foundation. I think it might have been yesterday, so this is probably too late at this point to promote going to vote if you're a member. But
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I guess recap or what do you call that? Review show in a year from now. See what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting. But we don't even know what they do anyways, so.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out next year. Recap show. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Loosely Coupled Show. If you did, please subscribe for more on software architecture and design.